Hi, guys, and welcome to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, with you, the host, Sam Believ, and today I'm having a conversation with Richard Grossman. Dr. Richard Grossman, PhD, is a healer, author, and a visionary who blends Eastern medicine, Amazonian shamanism, and sound healing in his work. For over 30 years, he has guided people through transformational plant medicine journeys, focusing on integration, forgiveness, and heart centered living. He's the author of Trust and Forgive, The Medicine of Your Life, and founder of Heart Feather, a space for healing and awakening. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Richard, I know you started your journey with plant medicines and healing modalities pretty early, but tell us your tell us your story. What brought you into this line of work?
Well, by my book. What got me into this line of work was miraculous, I would say. Something that I still don't quite understand, in that when I was a child, a relatively small child, we were given an assignment by our teacher to decide what we want to be when we grow up. And everybody in the class was saying, like, I want to be a pilot, I want to be the president, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer, the usual things kids will say. And I said I wanted to study the effects of plants on the mind. And which was extraordinary because at that point, I don't think anybody really knew that very many plants had an effect on the mind. I certainly didn't. I don't know where it came from. But that started kind of a lifelong fascination with consciousness altering through meditation, through focus, through music, through many things, and ultimately through plants, through fungi. And as I was traumatized as a child, physically traumatized, which led to a great deal of emotional traumatization and other layers of that, I was seeking my own healing first through the plants. And whatever I did, I couldn't really get there. I could get close, I could see the light, I could see what it might feel like to be not traumatized, and yet I couldn't get there. So one day I started working with a friend of mine. He was using various psychedelic medicines and entheogenic medicines, MDMA, 2CB, mushrooms plus MAO inhibitors. And then one day he calls me up and says, well, I just got back from the Amazon. I have some ayahuasca with me. I'd like you to experience this. I think it's the answer. And I thought about it for probably less than a tenth of a second before I said, okay. And a few days later, I had a cup in my hand and I was drinking it and had the most extraordinary experience of my life to that point. And I can't say that it healed me, but it certainly showed me that it was a path towards healing for me. And it wouldn't take one session, it wouldn't take 10, wouldn't take 20, it would take as many as it took until all the layers of that trauma were released from my body. What I realized also during that first session was, and you have to understand, this was 30 something years ago, more than 30 years ago. So there wasn't an ayahuasca community. There weren't hardly anybody even had heard of ayahuasca. And there certainly weren't shamans coming up from South America to give ceremonies. There were no bulletin boards for discussion. There was no Facebook. There was nothing. There was a couple books that mentioned it. And so what I was realizing during these initial sessions wasn't the result of my hearing many other people talking about these things. It was a real in the moment understanding that the trauma didn't begin with me in this lifetime. It went back quite far into the past. And as I unpacked that, the places that I recognized inside of me that were carrying trauma also went back in time. So, and I'm not going to say they were past lifetimes. I'm not going to say they were anything other than there were places in me that were carrying these scars, these impressions that had the setting of the past, many settings of the past, that when I released them in the visionary state I was in, and when I could trust what was happening and forgive what was happening, it changed my life in the present.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many things that you touched upon that we can go to, but let's talk more about, obviously you work with the medicine now for 30 years, and you've had your own healing process, and you've experienced many other people heal. That's a question I like to ask everyone. Is like, in your understanding, how does that healing happens? You talked about peeling off the layers of your trauma, but like, how does one heal from ayahuasca, with ayahuasca or through ayahuasca? What is the mechanism in your opinion?
There's probably many answers to that. First off, I have no idea. To me, it's a miracle. When they talk about milagrosa medicina, miraculous medicine, I believe that. I believe that with ayahuasca, we're teetering on the frontier, on the border between this world and something mystical and magical. And so the healing, we can go through the physical healing of ayahuasca and the fact that MAO inhibitors are antidepressant and all of the research that's happening now about DMT, which I'm honestly not really up on, but all that's happening. But there's also the part of call it the intention of what could be perceived or thought of as the spirit of ayahuasca, that there is a agenda in that combination of plants, or what the combination of plants opens a person up to, that has the intention and the goal of healing. So that's a semi-mystical interpretation along with a semi-physical interpretation. For me, what happens is that we're incredibly complex beings, these things we call humans. We're multidimensional, multi-layered, multi-lifetimed, possibly, and we're the sum total of everything that's ever happened to us, plus how we interpreted it. And the interpretation part's very important. So I can, if you have two people who have the exact same experience, the interpretations will determine what the outcome is on each one of their lives. So when I was in an ayahuasca vision in that first ceremony, and I found myself in a Nazi concentration death camp as somebody who was being led to their death, 3D, ultimately realistic experience, I had to go through a whole process in my mind that led me to a place where I could trust something. I won't give it a name. What I say is trust the process of trusting. And I had to forgive everything about that experience that I was in. And forgiveness meaning letting go of all of the connections and threads and tendrils that impression or memory or whatever it was had inside of me, that was hovering constantly in the realm of the unconscious mind. I might not be aware of it, that's the definition of unconscious, but the impressions of it, the energy of it, hovered underneath my consciousness. So when the medicine brought it to consciousness, I was given a choice. It wasn't like, okay, Richard, you have a choice now. It wasn't like that. I mean, the choice was in me. The choice was my choice. It was my decision, my everything, was to create a story about what I was experiencing to create reason, to create judgment, to create anger, to create hatred, to create all of the stuff that human beings are so bloody good at doing. Or I could release every aspect that I could find within me of my connection and that connection to me that impression had, and let the flow of time heal it and wash it away until it was no more. Obviously, the memory of it's still there, but the impact of it on me as a human being, as a soul, was to a great extent healed in that experience. That's why I say it's magic. It's magic, you know.
Yeah,
It's like
hard to
psychology doesn't deal with that, you know, that I know of
hard to
anyway.
explain magic
Hard to
unless
explain magic.
people, as someone who have experienced magic through medicine myself, I understand what you're talking about, but it's really hard to explain to someone. It's like, how do you explain to a blind person the color green if they've never seen
Yeah.
any color red? It's kind of similar to that. I like in your story you describe a moment where ayahuasca sort of claimed you and said you're mine now, and
Yeah.
it's very interesting. I'd like for you to share it because I had a similar experience. So tell us that story.
This was on my first trip to the jungle, um, 2003, I think, or two. Don't remember exactly, but I was getting my ayahuasca interest revived somewhere around the year 2000 after putting it aside to start an acupuncture practice and become a doctor and all of the intensity that entails. Um, but I wanted to go to the jungle, and when I was 18, I wanted to go to the jungle. I had gotten back from a trip to India, and I had two choices. One was to go to the jungle, and I had no idea about ayahuasca at that point. I just knew that there was something down there for me, or to stay here, and I chose to stay here. Kind of glad I did, because I probably wouldn't have survived the jungle at 18. I certainly didn't have enough money to fund myself down there. Um, so anyway, long story long, uh, I was invited to meet up in Ecuador with a shamanic family and take a probably about a week-long boat trip down to Iquitos from Archidona. And I didn't take more than a few seconds to decide yes on that one, because it just seemed like the most amazing experience. And so we had several ceremonies with this family, and then somebody told the father of the family, the medicine person of the family, that, gringos, we like the medicine strong. And he that upset him, and it also was a challenge for him. And the next couple of days later, we were sitting out on the porch of his little house, and he was passing around cups of this medicine, which each person drank and almost immediately ended up heaving over the side. And I was the second to the last person to drink, and then next to me was his son, and I drink, his son drinks, and his son sits down and goes, "Okay, fuerte," which in English is, "Oh, how strong." So I understood maybe 3 or 4 words in Spanish at that point, and I'm like, uh-oh. I wasn't, I didn't by no means was I super experienced with ayahuasca at that point. And all the other gringos are over the side heaving. I'm sitting there, and for some reason, his son and I hooked up mentally, and each one of us had the same thought: "Is I'm not going to purge unless he does." And we confirmed this the next day. It was hilarious. So we're both sitting there, like, you know, holding in this uber powerful medicine. I think the vines it was made of were over 100 years old. Super powerful. And holding it in, holding it in, holding it in. And I am getting a tour of the spirit beings of the jungle, of that area of the jungle, each one of which is coming up to me in three-dimensional, full-color reality, and looking at me, looking in my soul and saying, "Oh, you're welcome here. We like you. You're welcome here." For an infinite amount of time. I don't know how long that was. And then I became aware of a energy that was external to me, it felt like 1 mile, 2 miles away, this crackling, glowing orb of energy coming closer and closer to where we were. And I'm sitting there, these jungle spirits are still greeting me. It's the most beautiful experience I've ever had in my entire life, and still holding it in. And then this 12-foot, 10-foot tall, half-naked jungle woman was standing in front of me with 2 sets of eyes, looking at me with these 2 sets of eyes, and just beautiful, powerful feminine energy. And she looks at me and she says, you've been playing on the surface, but now we're lovers. Now you're mine. And I was like, okay, sounds good to me. And that was such a powerful experience. Unique. I never had anything like that again. But such a powerful, beautiful experience of being welcomed into that world in such a warm, loving, powerful, and ultimate way. Like, that's it. You're mine. There's no escape.
Mm.
And I was very happy at that point to understand that this medicine at that point became my life, became what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, I already knew it was what I wanted to do with my life from the first time I took it, but this was a confirmation of that for me. And, I obviously didn't go out the next day and start serving medicine. It took me a number of years to get there, but it was powerful.
Mm. It's very interesting because I've had a very similar story. It was my seventh ever ceremony, and it was my second ever ceremony in the jungle. But arguably the first ceremony in the jungle where I like connected and broke through. I had this period of time where I just couldn't break through. And I had a similar experience where I was given a tour of something, but it was not like entities were coming to me. I was somewhere else and they were showing me how things work. And then I had this message download like this is your path and this is how you do it. But it wasn't like a spirit told me, okay, you're mine, but it was very clear notion that said, if you you have to work with ayahuasca, and if you don't work with ayahuasca, you'll never be happy, which is a little more menacing, but still kind of saying the same thing. Was like, well, this is your path, and like basically there's no other option. Like this is what you should do. So very interesting because there's lots of parallels. And after that, I came back and I synchronistically started organizing ceremonies without even planning it. I've never served medicine. I've been working with it for 5 years now. I'm not really necessarily planning. Maybe eventually, if it's necessary, because my my vision was different. It was more about like one-on-one work, and so far I'm satisfying that necessity just by organizing the retreats. But it's definitely that path, and it kind of found me and just plucked me out of there. But you describe those beautiful visions, right? And people that will listen to this podcast, they will come to drink the medicine for the first time, and they will not see those visions, and they will be disappointed. And I know you talk a lot about that. What is the importance of visions, or maybe we should not focus on visions that much?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, that was for me a one-timer. I never had another experience like that. Don't think. I can't remember any. Um, Visions are what everybody, all the Northerners love. Most Northerners will chase visions and give great importance to visions. I tend to not think that visions are the most important thing. Because how does a person know what's a real vision, a visionary, mystical state vision versus brain farts, stuff discharging out of the brain? And it takes a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom to understand that there might be a difference, and then to understand what the difference is. It's a classic thing, people go down to Peru or Colombia. I don't know if it happens in Colombia, but I know it happens in Peru. People go down there and I was in a restaurant once in the Sacred Valley, and this group of Northerners came in and sat down in the table next to me, and they're talking, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I had the most amazing download. I got to get a new tattoo today, and oh yeah, I had an amazing download too. I've got to change my name, and I can't wear green anymore." And these like, what are these downloads? What are they coming from? And they're just levels of mind, because we don't have in our culture the grounding to know what is mind and what is not mind. What is what's going on in the head and what's going on in the heart. And because of that, when we interface with the medicine, all too often we take the things that are of the mind to be coming from the medicine. And it's why, one of my horrifying phrases that I hear, which is like, oh no, if somebody that I drank, I serve medicine to says this, I'm like, I've got some work to do here is, gee, last night the medicine told me, dot, dot, dot. And that always is going to need unpacking, almost always going to need great unpacking, because all too often it's exactly what you wanted to tell yourself. Not you personally, Sam, but you wanted to tell yourself, that is, again, interfacing with the brain via the power of the medicine to not necessarily create a state of clarity, but will almost certainly create a state of confusion. The medicine told me to quit my job. The medicine told me to get divorced. The medicine told me to get married. I was in a ceremony once, and these two people were sitting next to each other that didn't know each other, never met each other. And during the ceremony, the medicine told them to get married. They did the next day. 2 weeks later, they were divorced. Wasn't a good thing. And a lot of pain came out of that. So how do we know what's true and what's not true in these visionary states? And it's known. I mean, this is almost biblical stuff that we can deal with here. What is the still small voice of God within? Does it speak English? Does it speak Spanish? Does it speak Quechua, or Shipibo, or Hebrew, or whatever? What language does that small, beautiful voice of love that's in the heart speak? It doesn't speak a language, human language. The mind speaks human language. So if something comes to me in words, I'm going to be suspicious of it. With the exception, there's certain exceptions here. Okay. If it says to me, Richard, you're a lazy dude, get up and exercise every morning, or you're going to have a heart attack in 10 years, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to put that into practice. Number one, because it'll be good for me, whether it's coming from medicine or coming from spirit or coming from my mind. Number one, it's going to be good for me. And number two, I need it. So that's categorically different than, well, Richard, we've recognized on the spirit realm that you're incredibly special. We're calling you in for the work you have to do for the rest of your existence. And it'll make you into a great human being. Everybody will respect and worship you because of this. That's bullshit from the mind. That's ego inflation. So in a culture where we're not taught the difference, it behooves a person to walk that pathway very carefully with great intention and intelligence. And that's where I think the integration piece comes in, is hopefully the person who is doing the integration work with somebody else has gained the wisdom to know inflation from message of the heart.
Yeah, the whenever something is ego based and is very attractive for you to receive, then I would question it as well.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if it tells you, "Oh my God, you're the reincarnation of Jesus," and you really like the idea, that people kind of grasp to it, but it doesn't mean the information is wrong. It just might mean a lot of different things. You just have to try and interpret it, not just take it directly. Um, you talk about you use poetry in your ceremonies, which is very interesting. Can you tell us why, and specifically
Yeah.
which kinds of poetry, and at which point of time?
Yeah. I don't exactly recall the first time it happened, but I know that I had been reading various books on Sufi poetry in particular. And then one day I'm in ceremony and I'd pick up a piece of paper I'd written a poem on and I read it to the group. And the next day, everybody was talking about how incredibly beautiful and powerful it was and how it brought understanding to them of what they were experiencing. So I think a lot of times, especially people go into ceremonies and they hear somebody singing in a foreign language they don't understand. And, it's a whole ritual they don't understand, especially in the beginning, of course, not so much when you've done it for a while and you might have learned Spanish or you speak Spanish as a native or any one of the jungle languages that you might be working with. But, there's this place of almost a fracture between the experience and the understanding. And so if I read a poem that speaks directly into the same experience that people in the room are having, it creates a connecting point where their mind can understand their heart a little bit better. Their mind can then, instead of like having the heart, having the medicine work going on here and then the stomach and everything else, and the brain's going, what the heck is going on here? It's like a point of focus. So if I were to recite a Rumi poem, for example, which is where my poetry work started with Rumi and Kabir and Hafez primarily. Now, I just collect poems now that each one of them has a specific place in ceremony that works really well. But if I were to read, a poem that said something to the effect of, "Oh, incomparable giver of life, cut reason loose at last. Let it wander gray-eyed from vanity to vanity. Shatter open my skull, pour in the wine of madness. Let me be mad, mad as you, mad with you, mad with us. Beyond the sanity of fools lies a burning desert where your sun is whirling in every atom. Oh, beloved, take me there. Let me roast in your perfection." So that's a Rumi-ish poem. That one, that place where you're afraid to let go, where you're afraid to surrender to the power of the medicine. You think it's going to destroy you. And, here's something from possibly, 1,000 years ago saying, we've been here. We've done this. We know. It's okay. This is a gift you're being given. This is something valuable that you're being given. Don't fight it. Let go. Let your head be shattered open. Let your skull be shattered open. And let that wine or vine of madness be poured into you. And then beyond the sanity of fools, one of my favorite lines in poetry, because what is the sanity of fools? That's life unlived. That's life unexplored. That's life as an automaton, the prisoner of your thoughts, the prisoner of your emotions, the prisoner of your past, which is what we call sanity. Beyond that is a burning desert where the sun is whirling in every atom. Oh, incredibly beautiful to recognize that a person can let go into that experience of being utterly and totally overwhelmed, of being utterly and totally shattered, and that it's okay. That it's okay. That it's not only is it okay, but another beautiful line is, this is the greatest gift a human being can ever be given. Existence has no greater gift. For somebody who's in the middle of, maybe their head's in their bucket and they're processing through their life and they're on the verge of a breakdown, to recognize that, whoa, this is such a beautiful, incredible gift that you're being given here. The possibility to heal, the possibility to really let go of the past, the present, and the future. to the past and the future and live in the eternal present. So poetry, sometimes a poem is good for a laugh. It's just really funny and it breaks the tension. Sometimes they're just, honestly, I read them because I love to read them.
Yeah. No, I'm very very far from poetry. I've never read poetry. I've never appreciated it, but I've been recently interviewing people, and they mentioned that, and I've started sort of watching those YouTube video where the poetry is read, and it does make you feel a certain way. So I think there's something there. Kind of gave me an idea. Somebody needs to write some medicine songs with those lyrics, and just get people to feel it through music as well. Um, how old are you, Richard?
I never tell.
I'll ask ChatGPT later, but you're obviously you're obviously older, and you have a big gray beard, and you've been
I, I dye it gray every night. So, it's a disguise.
okay, yeah. But obviously, you've done a lot of healing, and you've been doing this for 35 years now. I've been in it for 5 years, so 30 years later, I could probably expect similar level of results as you. But I've been the occasionally I feel really confused because I've learned so much and I've done so much and I've healed so much, but it's like there seems to be always more, and it's increasingly more. And like, is there ever a point where you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm healed now, I just feel good? Is there
Mhm.
like, is there a light in the end of a tunnel, or is it just a never ending battle? Tell me about this, because I know that you seem like someone who would know that.
As far as I can tell, it's a never ending process. But on the good side of this, there's different stages to that never ending process. And the first stage is dealing with your shit, dealing with your stuff. That can take years or minutes. All the places in life where there's regrets, where there's pain, where there's trauma, where there's grief, where there's loss, all of these things put impressions inside of us that can be untied. The knots can be untied. It's a good analogy. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot. Then there's a familial karmic healing, which kind of can go back through family stuff. I've had experiences where I healed my ancestors. There's karmic stuff. There's all of these, let's heal this because it's causing me pain level. There's a lot of it. And the good news is that even healing one aspect of that makes life better. So it's putting the puzzle together or maybe taking the puzzle apart, you know. But then there's another level of healing that comes after that, which I call the how good can it get level of healing. And in that level, that's an infinite journey because we're infinitely journeying into the infinite. And so, no matter how far I journey into love, there's more. No matter how much light I experience, there's more. No matter how much joy I experience, there's the potential for more. And so that takes it out of the heavy, like I got to heal thing, which is certainly part of the process, and takes us into the realm of the mystics and the saints. Is how good can it get? And I was talking to somebody last night about this, and I said, imagine the miracle of just taking a breath with nothing else going on. Not easy, to take a full in and out, slow breath where you're letting your body breathe you and the mind isn't giving you a tour of it. We're finding all the reasons why one breath is enough, don't take two. Whatever the noise coming out of the head is, that's going to be there. So then we get into the realm of when I was first in the jungle, I had a realization that ayahuasca on some levels was the Raj Yoga, the jungle's interpretation or vision of Raj Yoga, of the yoga of meditation, the yoga of consciousness, the yoga of understanding beyond intellect. And I think that, that's why you'll get some of the old guys that have drunk 1,000 times and hope to do it 1,000 more, because each one there's new. There's new learning, there's new experience, there's new joy, new bliss. It's ever unfolding. And, in the Eastern cosmology, it's the lotus that's eternally blooming at the spinning heart of the universe, eternally blooming, and each moment of it is fascination. Each moment of it is something that, as Kabir said, my heart's bee drinks its nectar. I'm in awe of this. And awe is, I think, the highest, awe plus gratitude is the highest level of human experience. So I can, go through, I got to heal this, I got to heal that. It's horrible. I have to puke again, Then I think there's a breakthrough point, and it could happen instantly. It could happen anytime. It's not like it's linear and it's going to take a certain amount of time for it to happen. It can happen anytime of poof, the universe opens up, love opens up, understanding opens up, peace opens up. And then you're in a place where the medicine goes from being, beating you over your head to get the shit out to dancing with you in an eternal dance, because it's the eternal dance of your own soul. Medicine is the gatekeeper, not the gatekeeper, but the key in the lock. Some people don't even need the key in the lock. Their door's already open. I'm not saying everybody needs to drink ayahuasca, but that experience of releasing and letting go and allowing the light to take over, allowing the power of love to take over, that's an experience that every human being should have. Change the world overnight, because we certainly live in a world that lacks love.
Yeah, definitely. That's what makes me, and I'm sure many other people, work with the medicine and try and bring more people to the medicine, because of just how quickly it can make you feel that, even if it then fades away, still it's totally worth it. I think nobody should die before having experienced that connection and that love through the medicine, or through other ways. I like this conversation because what it does for me is your sort of more mystical, more poetic view on the medicine makes me want to drink again. Have been I drink so I run a retreat center called Lawira, and we do 3 retreats every month, and receive quite a lot of people here with the Colombian tradition. I don't serve the medicine, but I basically organize everything around it. And I don't know since when, but I've decided that I'll be drinking medicine once a month, and I've been doing it consistently for years now. And but still, sometimes there's this feeling of resistance. It's like, do I really want to, And this view on the medicine, the more poetic, more mystical view, makes me want to, I almost can't wait for the retreats to
Nice.
start. It's in a few days, so I can drink again. And I'm hoping to start drinking more medicine, because I think I'm ready to go to this next phase where it's like, how good can it get? Because I've never went there, because there is this importance of integration, and up to now I wasn't able to integrate because my ceremony is over and I've tons of work because I'm responsible for other people, and our team is now close to 50 people, so it's like there's a lot of stress. So I haven't been able to like, okay, this is time for me. But now I'm in the position where I'm hiring some people, and I'll be able to hopefully integrate and walk the talk. So I'm excited for this this stage, and this conversation is really helping. Speaking of like working with the medicine, you obviously serve the medicine as well. I know you don't like calling yourself a shaman, but we do have this epidemic of people that come and drink the medicine, and they want to serve it almost immediately. Like, and I mean, there's probably nothing wrong with it. As I like to say, don't confuse the letter, the invitation letter to study in the university with a diploma. So it's like, in your opinion, if someone gets that calling, what is the responsible way for them to get to the point they can serve the medicine, but without, let's say, hurting anyone, and doing it properly? What is the protocol?
That's a good question. I'm still working on that. Let me just back up for 1 second and just a suggestion, try drinking small amounts of medicine and then really using the force of your own intention to meditate with a small amount of medicine. So it's not dramatic, but you can use it gently. So going to the protocol, what makes a person who serves medicine good at it is they have to have a deep understanding of who they are. They have to have undergone their own deep, 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 deep healing. So they don't bring their own stuff into ceremony when they're trying to lead a ceremony. What I noticed when I was in my Amazon years is that of the people that I participated with, of the people that I drank with, some of them were incredible musicians with their, magicians with their Icaros and the plants and stuff, but they had very little logical sophistication, I would call it. They didn't understand the mind. They didn't understand the difference between mind and heart. And they had not necessarily done their healing work because their work was all about learning how to be a shaman, curandero, whatever. So when the northern mind comes down into that, I think there's a good opportunity, or there was. I think it's changing now because there's a lot more sophistication now. But there's the necessity for people to do their own deep inner work. I think that's the most important thing I'm trying to get to. Is if you haven't done your deep inner work, you're not clear. You're not going to be clean. While you're singing your Icaro, you put your own desires and intentions and ideas and thoughts and concepts into it. And we certainly have heard horror stories about what the results of that can be, of people starting ayahuasca cults and horrible things happening in ceremonies. So I think that's number one, is do your own work. Number two, I think one of the things that I think is necessary, and I'm really thankful that I've had this, is learn about the human body. Learn at least basic physiology and anatomy, or at least basic pathology, so I can know if somebody's having an anxiety attack or a heart attack during ceremony. So I can know if somebody's liver is going into a crisis, or if they have a gas pocket in their, transverse colon that's causing them a lot of pain. So understanding, illness, understanding health, I think is really important. If I were to start a school for leading ceremonies, it would have a concurrent Western medicine thread going on of anatomy, physiology, pathology, biology, things like that. I think having musical skill is incredibly important, or an innate musical skill, because singing an Icaro is much more than playing on a guitar and singing some words you got off of YouTube, or Spotify or whatever. That it's a quality of soul. Having a sitting meditation practice, I think, is incredibly important. And being under the tutelage of somebody who could be considered a master is also very important, or can be very important. And eventually, if you go back far enough, the master didn't have a master and they learned it on their own. And I think that's possible for people now, but that's a much trickier path. So finding a good teacher is really important. And in that, the X factor would be loving the work, would be loving it more than just about anything else there is, other than maybe your family, and wanting to see people heal and light up. And it's a tricky path there, because there's always the money thing, there's always the power thing, and there's always the people who hear voices in their head because they haven't done their own work to know the difference, who are told strange things as the leader of the ceremony that they need to do. And those strange things hurt people. Power imbalances happen. Having an incredibly airtight code of ethics that you practice by is incredibly important. Sacred Plant Alliance has an incredibly good code of ethics I worked on, and no first aid, no CPR, know when it's out of your hands and you got to get somebody to a hospital, which, if you're leading a good ceremony and doing good intake, should never happen. But it does. People die in ceremonies or die because of ceremonies still. And I think that's basically incompetence on the part of the person who was leading the ceremony, or really bad luck, because people die. But people who drink medicine and they're healthy and then they die, it's because of incompetence of the ceremony leader. Unless it's like a CVA or a coronary or something. So it's making it your life. It's understanding the amount of education that's really needed. I think certainly as Northerners, we have a different psychological makeup than jungle people have. I think it's important to study and understand the Western Northern mind. In other words, it's a lot. I mean, if it was a school, if there was a school to teach people how to lead ceremonies, it would be at least a 4 to 5 year program, full time, as though you're going to chiropractic school or medical school or acupuncture school. It's no less intense. And certainly the level of competence is equal or greater than many of those things.
And as a homework, there would be a lot of drinking of a lot of medicine. How many ceremonies would you say minimum somebody has to do before they even consider serving?
100,
I know you've done more than 1,000 ceremonies.
100,
100
100.
minimum.
First 10, you completely don't know what you're into and what you're doing. It's overwhelming. And then you got to do your own work, which is going to take a number of ceremonies. And I think 100's a good level, because if you get to 100, you're dedicated. You want to do it. It's part of who you are. And that takes the the festival shaman away. The joke
Mm.
is, just because you go to a festival and drop acid doesn't make you a shaman. There's certainly
Yeah.
plenty of people that you've probably met, I've certainly met, who it's like, yeah, I'm a shaman, eyeballs spinning in opposite directions, crystals.
Yeah. I've been there and I've
You
seen
know,
them, and unfortunately we have created some as well. We've had people that came here and had medicine for the first time, and they've been inspired, but they just wanted to take a shortcut. And I try to always
yeah,
communicate that. I think that analogy is really good. Don't confuse the letter, invitation letter to study with a diploma. That's about it.
it
And I
is.
think your expectation of 4 or 5 years and 100 ceremonies at least, I think that's very reasonable. And in a way, you're setting a very high standard even to most indigenous shamans, because a lot of them don't know the medicine and a lot of them are not good singers. So I think it's a reasonable thing to expect, because I like to call shaman like a neurosurgeon for the soul. It's like the work is invisible for most people, but it's very complex nevertheless. So would you trust your brain to someone with 1 year of experience. Of course not. That's why neurosurgeons they study for 10, 15 years, and it's even more complex. Your soul is even more complex, as you implied. There's layers and there's all this magic. So yeah, I think hopefully someday we'll have a branch of medical school training with a bit of musical training and a bit of business training and everything that's required to get someone to be like a proper medicine giver. So yeah, there's definitely lots to grow there. um, you also do acupuncture in your ceremonies occasionally. It's very interesting because someone reached out to me on your behalf, trying to get you on the podcast, and one of the reasons I was really interested is because I've been talking recently. I've met a person that talks a lot about acupuncture, and I've never really crossed my path before. And then I know you know about acupuncture, so I want to learn more about that and what is the connection between acupuncture and the medicine work.
Yeah, I rarely do that, I have to say. There was a period about 5 years ago I did a lot, especially with Wachuma. The needles have their own incredibly ancient and powerful magic to them and skill. And it's not unusual for somebody who's in a medicine ceremony to discover that there's places inside of them, literal places, stomach, intestines, whatever, that are completely knotted up and stuck. And some carefully placed needles at the right moment can almost immediately free up and balance the energy in a person's body. Beautiful. I mean, it's like, oh, a matter of minutes. And I don't do it too often with ayahuasca because basically, if I have 10 needles in somebody and they need to purge, it's going to be not a good thing,
Mm.
Quick, quick, get those out. But with Wachuma, there's usually more of a warning and, there's a purge point and then that doesn't tend to happen again. But, it's the needles are phenomenally powerful and they do have a spiritual tradition to them as well as a healing tradition. Much of the spiritual tradition's been lost or been hidden, I would say. But in lieu of the physical healing, which happened when the PRC decided that anything spiritual was no longer part of who Chinese people were. But there's a great deal of wisdom in that tradition that I think matches perfectly with medicine work when it's done skillfully. And please don't go out and buy some needles and start sticking it into your second ceremony you've ever had, because you're a shaman because you dropped acid at a festival, and you're an acupuncturist because it resonates. Well, it takes a lot to learn acupuncture. Yeah.
Okay. Um, but yeah, tell us more about acupuncture, as in what you know. I mean, it comes from the Eastern tradition, right?
Yes.
I mean, you said you do it in the ceremony. I'm kind of considering to trying it for the first time soon. Can psychedelics increase the efficiency of your acupuncture results, and what are the results someone can explain for acupuncture for somebody that like I literally know nothing about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, acupuncture's it's the same idea. It can work on physical illness. Um, it can work on pain. Musculoskeletal pain is certainly what most people get acupuncture for these days. But it can also work on physical illnesses. The idea is that it's complex. I mean, I can't explain it in 5 minutes, but it's complex. In Chinese cosmology, there's 5 elements: fire, earth, uh, metal, water, wood, and fire. I think I got that right. Anyway, and each one of those elements relates to two specific organs in the body. For example, the earth element relates to the spleen, pancreas, and the stomach. And also, they all relate to emotions. So, if somebody has, for example, we'll stick with Earth, somebody who thinks a lot, who ruminates, chews their cud of their thoughts, would be showing an imbalance in that particular element. So, there's hundreds of points on the body. Some of them work on, there's the points that are like shoulder points. Those normally just work on the shoulder, you know. Then there's the points on the hands and the feet, where the points on the hands and the feet become like circuit. Um, what is it, where you have a train going down the track and that can go to two different directions? What's that called? Junction? I don't know. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
somebody pulls it, and in the old days, and the train would go in one or the other. So the points on the hands and the feet, and to a great extent to the arms and the legs as well, lower arms and lower legs, serve as these switches that can shift energy from one part of the body or one element to another. So as there's these five elements, there's other ways of looking at acupuncture too. There's many theories of it, but if one organ is excessive, another one is likely to be deficient. And excessive can be caused by external pathogenic factors, disease, basically, by internal pathogenic factors, what we think about our emotions, food we eat, things like that. And so if one is taking too much, one gets hyperactive, another one's going to be hypoactive, generally. This is gross simplification. So I can find by looking at the person's face, looking at their skin, looking at the color of their face, looking at their tongue, looking at what's on their tongue, what's not on their tongue, feeling their pulses. There's 6 pulses on each wrist, and each one relates again to a specific organ in the body. I can determine which point to use to open up the pathways where it might be stuck from one organ to another, and then bring things into balance. So Chinese medicine is the medicine of balance and harmony. The whole idea is to harmonize the physical, emotional, spiritual body, ease into ease. With medicine, I think everything gets amplified on medicine. Somebody with a small degree of imbalance in their stomach might discover that they have stabbing, intense pain in their stomach that won't let up. And along with that, there may be hidden thoughts, repressed thoughts. So if I then go in with the needle into the exact point, I can even do it with my hands, into the exact point of pain and be there for a little while I'm doing points on the peripheral points to allow the balance and harmony to occur, allow the switches that are stuck in one direction or the other to be freely flowing in whichever direction is needed. Then very powerful treatment can happen. Very long-lasting treatment can happen. That's the beauty of that particular combination of work. Like when I was one of the jungle healers I worked with said, you're really a bridge. You call me bridge man, because you know so many different cultures and ways, and you're bringing them all into this coherent, solid thing. So I love learning. I love experiencing. I love, in my ceremonies, we don't just have Icaros, we have music, a lot of beautiful, beautiful music from different cultures, and they become medicine music. So it's this, the medicine has escaped the jungle for good, I hope. Somebody once asked me about that, and I said, maybe ayahuasca wanted to become a tourist for a while and learn about the rest of the world. Maybe she got a little bit tired of just Icaros and wanted to experience more of what this world has to offer and see what the rest of these crazy monkeys are doing around the world.
You wanted some Pink Floyd and Beatles on top of that, not just Icarus. Um,
It's
yeah,
happened on my
medicine.
ceremonies.
Yeah, medicines definitely have escaped and went all over the place, and there's definitely merit to balancing all this knowledge because it's kind of like in science. Previously we had all kinds of different sciences, and then it all came together and made a better, bigger science. So that there's definitely need to combine that knowledge and expand it. So
Yes.
I'm glad that you're doing it, and hopefully more people in the future. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
your little workshop on the acupuncture. I'm hopefully gonna try it soon. Um, Before we wrap up, tell us about your books and maybe some explain to people where they can find more about you and learn more about your work.
Commercial break. This is called, I guess it's backwards, isn't it? Yeah,
No,
it's
I
going to
can
be
see it.
back.
It says
You can
"Trust
see
and
it? Okay.
Forgive: The Medicine
The
of Your
medicine of
Life"
your
by
life.
Richard Grossman.
Yes. The journey starts where you are. And that's like, it's a major work for me. People for many years said, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I'm like, I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a book. It's too much work. I'm not ready. I don't have enough to say. And then I had done, like I've written a bunch of essays and stuff that was just hanging out on my computer. And then came COVID. And then this became my world for a couple of years. And fortunately, the outside, I live in the mountains and there's beautiful hiking trails here. But I started writing and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I wrote about my life. I wrote about my stories. I wrote about others' stories. I wrote about philosophy. I wrote about what's wrong with the world and turns it into cohesive vision that is trust and forgive, which is what came out of that initial powerful experience in the concentration camp, where what was being told me as a way to get out of it was to trust and forgive, and which is a whole process that is a lot more than just those words. So it has some stories in it. It has some fiction in it. It has a lot. I can't even say everything that's in it because it's too
It's
much.
a pretty hefty book.
It's I'd never written more than like maybe 10 pages before, and this one has 322 pages, and it's beautiful. Everybody I know who's read it has gotten great value out of it. Some people have read it 3 or 4 or 5 times because it has that ability to unveil layers as you're reading it. It even has a lot of footnotes. There's footnotes.
For people like me that don't know how to read, is there an audiobook version?
There should be an
You should
audio version. I'm
you
guilty.
should make one. It's like I stopped reading books like 10 years ago. I'm just full audio. It's just
Yeah.
for some reason I enjoy it more. Even like the information absorbed is better. I think you have a pretty good voice. You could voice it yourself. You have a nice microphone. Maybe next time COVID comes back, you can do that. Hopefully
No.
not.
No, I should. I'm working on another book right now. I finished this one, which is nonfiction, except for 3 stories, which are fiction. And I'm working on a fictional novel now that's ayahuasca based as well,
Mm.
that I'm probably 3/4 of the way through. So it should be published hopefully by spring.
Sounds
Yeah.
interesting. Well, Richard, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you
Oh,
for your story, all the knowledge.
it's on
Um,
Amazon, has it?
yeah. Once again,
Amazon,
Trust and Forgive: The
The
Medicine of
Medicine
Your
of Your
Life by
Life.
Richard Grossman.
Or it's also on
Check
my
it out, guys.
website, which is heartfeather.com. Heartfeather. And
Heartfeather.com.
you can reach me through
Yeah.
heartfeather.com if you need to reach me. Yeah.
I'll leave some links in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much, Richard, and hopefully you can come to Colombia someday, visit us, and maybe you can help you be even a better and bigger bridge if you expand your knowledge. So you're definitely invited. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Sam.